How you doing there, sports fans or track fans? Today I'm out working on the Can Am, and I've done some disassembling that I'm sure that you can tell. And I'm going to be doing the second portion of what I promised you guys. I had started a video about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, something around there. It was right around the time of my stepfather's passing. Basically what had happened was I ran across a subject where, and I see this a lot, people talk about leaving, what to do with your battery tender. Should you leave it plugged in 24/7? Some people do that, have even described to how they've even sold bikes with 7 or 8 year old batteries. I'm going to reiterate that the AGM battery that's used in most modern motorcycles today is good for 4 years. Just about like with any car. You're going to get 4 or 5, maybe you'll have some higher end batteries that are claiming 6. They're usually very large cell units. They're usually, performance, quite expensive, so on and so forth. But the average life for any battery, car or truck, is 4 years. And you need to start servicing and checking it at that point, even if it's a service-free. You should be regularly checking posts. You should be checking your wiring. You should be doing occasional electrical tests to make sure that everything's in scope. So yesterday we did a video on testing the battery to make sure the battery is functional and at proper ranges. Today we're going to do some universal, again, these are universal tests for all motorcycles. And all these principles apply. So we're going to go over to the left-hand side of the vehicle real quick and try to speed this up a little bit. So I'm just going to make sure I'm not in time lapse. Doesn't appear to be. So here you can see I've retracted the top lining. That does slide back and forth and into place once you remove the screws. And I'm going to point out, down in this section, on the left side of the motor, typically speaking, is where you're going to find your stator components. Now, here on the Can Am, we have a special situation where it's also doing our clutching here. I've usually seen the clutching done on the other side of the vehicle toward the anterior of the motor, but this seems to be the case here, is where this is going to be located. And if we notice and take note, there is a section behind this clutch unit where you see there is a very thick cable coming out of the stator down here. Here's my finger, and there's that thick cable. It's not this unit. This unit is associated with the clutch. But this thick cable that it's running behind is coming out behind this portion of the clutch. Behind this portion of the clutch is your stator. If it has to be replaced, you have to pull this unit. Pipes, tanks, coolers, all of it. So if you're wondering why it costs, $700 or $2,000 to do a clutch, you've got to strip this entire side of the vehicle down on the RS-S, remove all these panels, remove this tank, remove that tank, which is oil, remove all this, get this all out, service the clutch, get the pipe out of your way so you can work effectively, and go from there. So that's going to be an 8-hour job. That's why you're seeing, notice it was mentioned that this is a $2,000 job. So this thick cable wire back here, or harness, that you can see more readily from here. Here it is here. I hope you can see it down there wiggling away by my hand. There, that one. That contains these 3 yellow wires. This is your infamous 3 yellow wire harness. This exists on every motorcycle I've ever owned. Some ancient stator systems I've seen that have used 2 and a black, but all the modern ones, everything up from 1977 XS11s up to now, uses at some portion these 3 wires. These are the stator wires. These are the magnetic field wires that come off your triple phased stator. Each phase represents a wire. So what we're going to do is we're going to be primarily testing this guy. And we'll see if I can get into these special harnesses. Now you're going to notice that I've had this apart. I put in a new unit. It's a little dusty, but I've dielectric greased the leads so they're a little slick looking. But you want that. Wherever you have a connector, you want to use dielectric grease because it's important to be able to make sure that you have proper connection. Dielectric grease allows for that. Now I'm going to make this stand up here on this so I can talk a little freely. Appreciate your patience. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get that 3-wire harness, and I set down my handy dandy Gardner bender. This is the GDT 3190 model, by the way. And what I'm going to do now is I need to do something. I'm going to first do what you call the resistance check. This is a check of your resistance within the stator. And what you want to do with this is basically you are going to, okay, that's house. Now I'm looking on the resistance scale. I want to find the infinity setting, which is hard to find on this unit. So I think I'm actually, yep, those are household voltages. I'm going to have to go with the lowest setting on this. There, I'm on my lowest resistance setting, and I want that to go to 0 to show that I have no resistance. You'll see when that'll go to 0. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to be taking your harness here and not running. You're going to test. Now you should be getting, if you can't get into there with your prod, I can see where I can through the dielectric grease, but you need to be able to make sure that you're going to do 3 pairing tests. What's a pairing test, you say? Well, you take your meter and you pair all 3 in 3 different ways. Let me demonstrate here. I think I can get in here. So here is your connector. So you're going to test here to here. Doesn't really matter which core you do. That's 1 pair. There's 2 pairs, and there's the 3rd pair. You want to test all 3. Now down here on the meter, I'm seeing 0.1 for resistance, which is good. You want some resistance on the magnetic fields, and that's what you're checking. So there's 0.1 to 0.2 on the first pair. On the second pair that I demonstrated, there's 0.1 to 0.2. It jumps back and forth. Now on the 3rd pair I'm demonstrating here it is again, 0.1 to 0.2, and I'll show you on the meter if I can get these to stick. I can. I just want to show you at least 0.1 reading. 1.1 reading, sorry. So bear with me, folks. There it goes. There's the 0.1 reading. Now that I have that reading across all 3 pairs. This pair, the 2nd pair, and the 3rd pair. So as long as you make 3 pairs out of those 3, you'll be testing those 3 phases, if you will. So my phase resistance is matching, and that's what you want. You want your resistance value to be no more than 1. If your resistance value is over 1, then you're showing that stator is starting to connect. They should be down in the 0 points, and they should be below 0.5. So the resistance readings are important and critical because that's basically the resistance that's created to create your magnetic field, which strips electrons, which gets the messages going. The other important thing to remember is your stator as it operates, because it's 3-phase. Where have I heard that term 3-phase before? I think in the house. 3-phase. Electrical. 3-phase electrical. Who can guess what 3-phase electrical might also apply to? You got it. AC voltage, like your house. So you want to know what is being produced right off your motorcycle at all times? AC voltage. Why it is that we break AC voltage down to DC voltage, go to blah, blah, blah. Not going to go into it. But the point is that your rectifier regulator's job is to take that AC signal from the stator and convert it to DC. So the first thing that we've done is check to see, are the magnets in place and are they safe? So by showing and demonstrating and going through that we measured 0.1 to 0.2 resistance, we're within 0.1 to 0.5 for the resistance factor. That's acceptable for most stators as long as they match. If you have a 0.5 and a 0.1, you have a phase failing. And the other 2 are 0.1, you have a phase failing. If you have a 1 and 2 0.1s, you have a phase failing. If you have 2 1s and a 0.1, you have 2 phases failing. Are you following me? You don't really need to understand this other than the fact that you want, when you test your resistance off your 3-wire lead, you want to be able to make sure that it's getting 0.1 to 0.5 ohms in resistance. That's 0.1 to 0.5 ohms resistance. If you're in the 1 range or above, your magnets are starting to ground in the stator and you're going to run into problems. And when that happens is when you start to see drifting voltage, strange voltage, and you're going to notice a reliance on a battery tender. You have to forgive my side here. I've taped this up because I'm being cheap. It's ripping. Anyway, so that's how you do the resistance test. The second test is also pretty easy, and we're actually going to capture it a little differently, and I'm going to do that in a separate video because I want to try to keep these short. Thanks for bearing with me on this one, but this is the resistance testing portion of your stator, and in here I did show you where here is your RR regulator, rectifier regulator, and this is the 3-wire set that plugs into it. Now this connector is your black and whites. Guess what that does? That is the DC power escaping the RR. Should come out at 14 volts like I showed you yesterday. So we're going to move on from here and just give you another look at what we're looking at down there. That's your electrical stator. There's your 3-wire connector coming from the side of the motor, which exists down here on the left side of the motor. Again, I've never seen those on the right. And remember, all this advice and tips are also universal. You can find that 3-wire harness on the left side of the motorcycle, on a Kawasaki, on a Harley, on any brand, and you will be able to troubleshoot and diagnose your stators and electrical systems. This is a critical skill because, honestly, your bike should maintain itself. You shouldn't need a battery tender unless you're dealing with winter conditions. I'm going to move on to the second movie from here. Again, thanks for watching, and this is the resistance portion testing of your cycle, and from here we're going to move on to doing an actual voltage test of the stator as the vehicle's running. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Peace.